Now when the world gets too complicated, too expensive, and just too screwed up, I'm the guy that goes fishing. That's right, because I'm a solutions-oriented guy. And tough solutions require clear thinking. No one thinks clearer than when they're fishing, or angling, as Brits like to call it, which is a stranger choice of terms because Brits are the least angular people in the world. The idea of getting from point A to point B in a straight route to a Brit is just completely incomprehensible. That's why every town in this country, with the exception of Milton Keynes, looks like it was laid out by some drunk guy with an Etch-a-Sketch and a bottle of Jack Daniels. If anyone gets what I'm doing here, by the way, I'd be fucking surprised. Like, honestly, I'll send £20 to the first person that gets this reference. I'm fucking serious. Fishing has become quite common in a lot of games nowadays, and I was recently playing an influx of games that all coincidentally happen to have a fishing minigame in them. So with that on the mind, I thought what might be fun is to take a look at a few examples, compare them against each other, and judge how well they tackle the art of fishing. In particular, I don't want to look at full-on or dedicated fishing games like Real Fishing or Pro Fishing Simulator, more so games that have a fishing mechanic within the rest of their control scheme, and see how well they fit their fishing element into the rest of the game. There are lots of games I could use as examples, but I'm going to be mostly looking at games I own, in particular Far Cry 5, Dark Cloud, Fable Anniversary, Stardew Valley, and Red Dead Redemption 2. Far Cry 5 is the game I bought and played the most recently that contains fishing, and the one that made me say, gee, I've been playing a lot of fucking games with fishing in lately. I've already said the word fishing about 30 times in this video, and I'm already sick of it. So from here on, I may also refer to fishing as angling, rodding, or snonkling. Far Cry 5's mechanics are very simple. Throwing your line, hooking and reeling are all done with the triggers or second bumpers. You throw out, attract fish, hook them, then reel them in and try to fight their movement with the thumbstick. As with every mechanic in a Far Cry game, it's all done in first person and accessed through a utility wheel, and it all feels pretty intuitive. The most unique and admirable thing about Far Cry 5's fishing is its use of line strain, which many games have, but Far Cry 5 feels pretty nice and fluent. As you reel a fish in, your line turns red, almost like an overheating system. And when it gets too red, you lose the fish. The angling here is flattened down to the bare minimum, and many mechanics you might expect are absent. For example, there's no indication of fish in the water until you start reeling in. There's also flies to attach. Normally these would help you attract a specific fish, but as far as I can tell, it's completely pointless. All bodies of water are fishable here, but each one has one specific kind of fish, as opposed to games like Dark Cloud and Red Dead 2, where you might have to distinguish between fish of different sizes, types and difficulties. So what's the point in using a fly for, say, trout in particular, when the lake you're fishing in only has trout, and there's never a possibility you won't reel one in? Fishing in Far Cry 5 is never made to be very involved. It doesn't have a related leveling or skill system, and the only reward is money, which is the same reward as most other activities in the game. The only unique reward from fishing is the best rod in the game, tied to a quest line, where you catch a couple of one-time legendary fish which still aren't too challenging. Once you have the best rod, you'll never struggle to catch anything ever again. When you land a catch, you get a nice wriggling shot of it, and, weirdly, your usually silent protagonist lets out a little victory chuckle. It feels pretty satisfying. Far Cry 5's rodding game is a half and half endeavour, with a handful of negatives but an equal amount of positives. Due to an uninvolved system and an effective presence, you could take the entire element out and it wouldn't affect the game one iota. However, it means fishing is simple and easy. Far Cry 5's primary gameplay controls are based around FPS combat, and thankfully, switching out of your rod to your guns in a pickle is very intuitive. Overall, Far Cry 5's snonkling, I told you I'd do it, minigame is unnecessary and scant, but that doesn't at all mean that what's there is bad, and gives you a nice relaxing element of respite from the rest of the story-driven game.
Well, hey there. Got a moment?
The purpose of Far Cry 5's fishing is mostly used to make quick money in a relaxing and swift manner.
Of course, a lot of open world games are heavily combat based or have a large focus on a dramatic, doom-filled plot, and those with fishing can use the mechanic as a way to take the player comfortably away from the heavier meat of the game for a while still being involved in keeping them playing. Another fantastic example of this is Dark Cloud for the PlayStation 2, though you may be more familiar with its somewhat popular sequel, Dark Chronicle. Dark Cloud is an adorable and varied little game, with elements of dungeon crawling, town building, and a pretty innovative weapon leveling system. All these elements push forward the main goal of trying to save the world, in typical fashion, but Dark Cloud's fishing process is also deeply involved, if very easygoing. Catching fish here is a matter of patience and variables. There are multiple areas, each with a different angling spot, the fish of which are different because of their environment. Is it a freshwater lake or a saltwater ocean? Is it night or day? Are you in the jungle or the desert? Each area has different fish, each fish requires different bait. You're encouraged to try and catch different fish this time round thanks to the inclusion of fishing points. You can use these to buy useful items, upgrade tools, and rare weapons. The fish that have an uncommon presence or require rare bait will net you more fishing points, so obviously those are the ones you want to catch.
In the real world, fishing requires patience, above all else. You could catch a fish with your bare hands if you're patient enough. And fishing in Dark Cloud is no different, and that's what it nails about fishing. It's about mixing and matching different bait in different spots, keeping track of the results and mastering that knowledge through pure trial and error. Nah, I'm just fucking with you. There's a fishing guide on GameFAQs.
Here you can see the fish in the water as you lure them, which is a neat little feature, and as far as I can tell, with the exception of Red Dead 2, is pretty unique to Dark Cloud. Generally, you want to aim for the biggest looking fish, which tend to be the largest or rarest in species, which will net you more fishing points. As for reeling mechanics, there is none. The whole control experience comes from casting your line and waiting patiently to see if a fish takes the bait. Once it pulls the bobber under the surface, you hook on and that's it. If I could give one downside to the fishing in Dark Cloud, it's that you have to activate it through fishing signs to basically enter a whole new mode. It feels very separated from the functionality of the rest of the game, despite the fact that to actually fish only requires 2 buttons, one to choose your bait and another to cast and catch your fish. It's not void of any challenge though, it does require some reflex as you can easily miss the limited window to snag the fish once it's hooked. But generally, Dark Cloud's snorkeling minigame is about taking your time and enjoying the relaxation. It's got a very unique and tranquil atmosphere, just like the rest of the game, and it genuinely captures the peaceful ideals of sitting against a tree with a bob in the water, taking a nap on some solitary riverbank. For that reason, while I don't think it does the best job at portraying the art of fishing, Dark Cloud may very well have my personal favourite rodding mechanic in any video game. It's purposeful, peaceful, and pleasant.
You know, this really is a very peaceful and relaxing fishing hole. Beautiful. Right over there is where I dumped that body they never found. But fishing isn't all about relaxing. For some, it's a sport, and a sport requires skill. I said earlier that fishing games generally take one of 2 approaches. Sure, sometimes they can go peaceful and easy, but on the other hand, some of them want to give you a real challenge. Oh fuck, a real challenge. That was a good joke. Fuck me.
By challenge, I mean an active level of participation. While Far Cry 5 and Dark Cloud do require paying attention in order to hook a fish, the rest pretty much does itself from then on. Some games, like Fable on the other hand, take a more active approach, where you'll lose the fish if you're not pressing the right buttons at the right time. I'm playing on the anniversary version of Fable for this one. Fable's fishing isn't good. It's actually pretty fucking appalling if I'm honest with you. Originally, this section was my shortest and only a couple of paragraphs long, but while revisiting the game to capture footage for this video, I ended up, in quite a thematically fitting manner, opening up a can of worms. Angling here requires you to participate, sure, but with the least amount of effort possible. It's all done with the A button. You press it to hook a fish and then enter a fighting bar mode. The fish switches between moments where it's docile and you can repeatedly tap A to reel it in, or fighting back when you have to stop reeling, otherwise the bar turns red and the line breaks, similar to Far Cry 5. Fable has one massive roadblock when it comes to the potential of having a fun yet challenging minigame: the balance. The challenge is put in all the wrong places. It's bad. And when the challenge is bad, the game isn't fun. The amount of taps it takes to make progress with the fish is imbalanced compared to the amount of taps it takes to strain the line and lose it. To put it mathematically, it takes about 10 taps to get ahead of the average distance the fish gains when it's pulling away from you, but it takes only 3 taps to strain the line enough to snap it and lose the fish. This means you're trying to make 10 taps as quickly as possible and get ahead, making it hard to stop before you accidentally click 3 times too many and lose your fish. On top of that, the fish's resistance seems to have some kind of RNG factor, in that it can pull away from you at any given time, seemingly for a fairly long time, meaning if you get really unlucky, the fish can pull away for 4 or 5 seconds, give you only a couple of clicks to reel in, pull away again for the same length of time, and then do it again, giving you no chance of actual progress. You're a victim to the whim of the fish. This wears on you, and makes you even more liable to furiously tap enough to break the line out of impatience. This isn't even really worth it. As far as I can tell, there's 3 kinds of fish to catch, technically 4 when you include a training fish that introduces you to fishing if you haven't done it earlier. These are a goldfish, a blue goldfish, and a moonfish, which can turn day into night. Like, that's fucking helpful. None are worth much, and that's if you can find a vendor to sell them to. You can always eat a moonfish to help you find one. Oh wait, all the fucking shops are closed at night. So fishing is boring and stressful, and that's when you can get it to work. Sometimes when you stand next to a body of water, the symbol to fish doesn't even show up at all, as it's constantly trying to clash with the other symbols that the downward direction functions as depending on your location and situation, be it the teleport or dig controls. So no wonder it pulls a similar move to Dark Cloud and has to fade you in and out of a new mode just to make the rodding work at all. As a fan of the series, I have to say, Fable games have always had an over-encumbered control scheme, utilising, or attempting to utilise, both the directional pad and face pad control scheme, and then a separate one for each of those for when the right trigger is pulled in or not, at least in the first Fable game. That's 16 buttons, not including the quick menu you access through the upwards direction to use all the actions that the face buttons couldn't fit, such as item use or expressions. And again, not including when the same button acts in multiple ways for different purposes, and not including the rest of the controller. Movement and camera aside, that's at least 23 controls. Do you think that's enough? Fable couldn't even make a succinct and workable control scheme for its base mechanics of combat, trading, and world exploration, so I'd be tossing it change for the fucking bus if I dared to dream and said it managed to fit fishing in with any sense of grace. It needed 4 buttons for socializing with villagers, but couldn't dedicate more than 1 to a notably intricate and visceral activity like fishing? Although in Fable's defense, I would say it's pretty true to life that getting someone to like you is harder than catching a fish. I use Fable here as a control example against my others. On a technical level, the fishing in Fable does everything wrong. It doesn't fit into the control scheme, the method of catching fish isn't fun, and its purpose in the overall game is, for the most part, unnecessary. The only positive of Fable's fishing is that it's got a secondary purpose that Far Cry and Dark Cloud hasn't touched upon, catching something other than fish. This is distinguished by a ripple in the water. Anywhere else you can just catch a pointless fish. But in these, you can catch anything from money, customization items, and silver keys for opening limited-use treasure chests. With open worlds containing combat mechanics, leveling systems, and an overarching plot, it's hard to give the act of catching wiggly little water boys a sense of grandeur. So snorkeling for items that help with other in-game activities is a simple fix to make it worthwhile, unless you also make fishing itself an important player system. Stardew Valley is an incredible example of a game that uses fishing for character leveling, useful money gathering, and treasure collecting. While Stardew Valley isn't primarily a fishing game, it's made to be a very large part of the overall experience. The game is often base described as a farming sim, but the truth is it balances farming, fishing, combat, crafting, and socializing all on an equal level, and it's up to the player to decide how much or how little of these things you do in each playthrough. Unless you want to get 100% completion, then you'll have to dive into each mechanic at some point. Like all these RPG games that contain an open inventory, fishing is done by accessing your rod in your items menu, and then similar to Fable or Far Cry, keeps a very simple control scheme by having every element done with one button. Seems to be a running theme that these games utilise a very little amount of controls, if not just the one key. We know why this is done, less is more when you have to balance multiple gameplay mechanics on the same controller, so keeping the controls for each activity to a bare minimum is helpful for the player. I'm a fan of this mentality and it's very convenient, but I guess the downside is it doesn't offer much variety or challenge to one's ability to manage multiple things at once as you would with real life fishing. In Stardew, you cast out and wait for an alert on your character to signify a bite. Once you've hooked, you get a fishing bar, which is very different from the one in Fable. This one focuses less on speed and more on precision. As the fish wiggles about the water zone, you have to try and raise a green icon to its location, which will reel the fish in, indicated by the rising completion meter on the right. If your green icon isn't aligned with the fish, the meter drops, and when it turns red and hits the bottom, you lose the fish. So the concentration comes from trying to keep up with the fish as it moves about the bar. The most important note about this game's challenge is that you can't lower the bar, you can only raise it. The bar drops by itself, so you have to rhythmically tap your action key to keep up with the fish, and if the fish suddenly drops, you can't follow it. You just have to wait till the bar drops to its position. I have to say, this is a very unique way to handle the challenge aspect. As you level up fishing, the green indicator will lengthen, making your job easier, as well as improving the chances of catching higher quality fish, which obviously sell for more money. As you upgrade to better rods, you can also attach bait to make bites more frequent, and bobbers that have different effects, like the trapper bobber, which slows the rate at which the completion bar drops, or one that improves the chances that treasure will appear while you're angling. Thankfully, you can snag the treasure and the fish you're reeling within the same cast. There's a huge variety of fish here that sell for different prices, are used for completion bundles, and are ingredients in tools and recipes. There are also rare fish that appear in certain weather, seasons and times of day, and legendary fish that can only be caught once.
The fishing here is dynamic, well balanced, looks nice and has plenty of variety and purpose. However, I don't like it. Yeah.
I know this isn't going to make me very popular, but I'm going to say no for all the right reasons.
Stardew Valley's fishing has an element of testing your reflex in tracking the fish with your precision bar, especially in situations where the fish rapidly zips up and down. And there are always supplements to make catching the harder fish easier, as they buy you more time or subdue a handicap. But still, I can't deny the presence of an element that I absolutely dislike being in a minigame such as this. Look. At the end of the day, there are some fish where no matter how leveled you are, it all comes down to whether or not they stop jumping about enough to give you the chance to actually catch them. The amount of times you might push your bar up to the fish at the moment it rapidly shoots down, only to see it jump swiftly back up again the second your bar drops to the right position, is infuriating. As you can't predict the future, your chances boil down to hoping the fish either doesn't do this, or you have the right add-on to delay failure for long enough to get another shot, such as with the trapper bobber. I can't complain too much. Luck is an established element in Stardew Valley from your first in-game day and affects almost everything, from your chances of finding gems and artifacts to even the amount of friendship points netted by talking to people, I believe. You can even check how good your luck is each day on the TV's Fortune channel. But I've gone fishing with excellent luck as well as luck supplements from consumables at max level and still had fish act in a way that makes them completely uncatchable. This feels like it boils the entire experience down to luck. And while I'm fine with luck being a component in terms of how good the fish you catch are or how often you hook them, I think the actual act of interacting with the controls in order to win over the fish should, at least for the most part, come down to the player's skill that they've been honing throughout the course of the game. And that simply isn't the case. Considering that fishing here is labelled as an actual character skill, shouldn't the act of catching them mostly come down to just that? Skill? You definitely won't be able to catch any of the legendaries without a max-sized fishing bar, and you'll be a crafty bugger if you can catch one without a trapper bobber. Other than that, your best bet is to pray to Yoba that they behave themselves. Angling, at the very least, feels nice, and while getting your fishing level up feels like a chore in later stages, the control is responsive and the design is neat and aesthetically pleasing. But while I understand most fans really love this mechanic, I just can't agree with the majority. Stardew Valley is one of my favourite games of all time, and there's nothing it does badly, that includes the fishing. But if you're going to make me put effort into the interaction of a certain mechanic, then I would prefer how successfully I am able to perform that mechanic to come down to how skilled, attentive or responsive I am at performing it. That way I get the added enjoyment of being able to improve my abilities over the course of the game. My victory coming down to the whim of the fish's behaviour just makes my failed participation feel like wasted effort. The failure doesn't feel like it's my fault, unlike with Red Dead Redemption 2 or even Fable. And that's a huge problem. I have my qualms. And I don't care for it.
Fishing in games has a very illustrious history, and if I tried to talk about every single example, I'd be here all day. But do more modern games that incorporate this whole fishing jive get better at it? as they learned from previous examples? More importantly, do they get better at balancing not only the dual control scheme of primary gameplay and snorkeling, but also balancing the divide between those who want to fish for a challenge and those who want to fish to relax? Well, I may be just some simple African-American golfing champion, but in my personal opinion, yes, they do. You know, I've never actually been fishing.
For the most up-to-date and in-depth angling supplement, look no further than Red Dead Redemption 2. Here, much like in Far Cry, fishing is accessed through a secondary items wheel, and right off the bait, one of this fishing game's downsides is the glacial pace at which you have to take each step, from extending your rod to reattaching different spinners. But once you're deep into gameplay, this is to be expected from the realistic approach to character movement seen in other mechanics, such as searching through drawers, skinning, or rifling the pockets of corpses. RDR2 has a selection of spinners that attract different sizes of fish at different types of watering holes, of which there's plenty of variety, from lakes, rivers and swamps. As you play, you expectantly get better spinners that catch multiple varieties of fish and even legendaries. Left trigger will put you into a sort of focus mode, allowing you to throw the line into the water. Attracting fish is a multi-option business compared to our other examples. You can either tap the right trigger to flick your line, or slowly reel in with the right stick to draw fish towards you. Personally, I never found much use for flicking, and you take the risk of scaring off the old trout if you flick it too much. Just like a girlfriend. Once you've got the fish's interest, you hook it, forcing it to try to swim away. As with many examples, you pull the line in the opposite direction of the fish to stop it from gaining distance, and then once it's tired, you start reeling in by spinning the right stick in circles. This right here is Red Dead 2's golden element of challenge. The faster you spin, the faster you reel the fish. But the bigger or harder the fish is to catch, the less time it's going to give you to reel and the longer it's going to take to pull it towards you. But the longer it takes you to reel in the fish, the more your rhythm gets off balance and the more tired your thumb's going to get. Which means the closer you get to catching the fucker, the more chance there is you'll lose it at the last minute. It's really pretty ingenious. This is especially true with legendaries. You always lose them right when you've been struggling for ages, just because it's hard to keep it up. Just like a girlfriend, you get rewarded by learning to manage two things at once, as pushing the left stick forward and then snapping it back will yank the line, which is a brand new feature we're looking at here, causing a quick jolt towards you and making your job a little easier if you can keep doing it. Another unique element to fishing here is the use of the game's eagle eye mechanic. In the world, this is used to help you follow animal tracks or identify elements of interest that are blended into the environment. In fishing, this allows you to not only see the fish in the water, similar to Dark Cloud, but as a step up from that game, you can also see what the fish look like in terms of shape and size. And once you've been doing this for long enough, you'll get better at understanding what shape in the water identifies which fish, allowing you to actually aim or attach the right bobber for the right one. When you're not reeling in a little fishy, Red Dead 2 has a serene and angelic atmosphere at any time of day, whether you be night rodding or snorkeling at sunset, which both sound like euphemisms for dogging, and I do apologise. Either way, until you actively put effort into catching, you're given the opportunity to treat your time fishing as a calming endeavour, while your bob sits in the water and you enjoy the twinge of a harmonica against a backdrop of shimmering stars and placid, breezy waters. Until a cougar comes up and scratches your face off. The last thing to talk about in terms of RDR2's angling is that there's actually a multiplayer element. Apart from your open world roaming in multiplayer where friends and strangers can comfortably meet up anytime and throw rods together, again, not a cottaging reference, the online game has a challenge mode where players compete against each other to catch as many fish as they can on a time limit, and the one with the most catches wins. It's reminiscent of the ice hole competition in Stardew's first winter event. And though I haven't played Red Dead 2's online as extensively as I'd like, and while most of its multiplayer minigames are geared towards the gunplay and treasure earning, either as a team or against each other, the fishing challenge is easily my favourite of the multiplayer activities, and is a neat little respite that allows players to enjoy a rather different and wholesome element of the game together. Overall, Red Dead Redemption 2's fishing additive is far from the absolute best and most fitting that gaming has the potential to offer, as it has many notable flaws, from its clunky preparation animations that are made to fit into the style and structure of the wider game, its sometimes inappropriately timed open world encounters conflicting with the mechanic, or even just that it still has plenty of potential to go deeper under the skin of finesse and detail. But with the decent balance of skill in the control scheme that it's laid out, its presence within the game as both a narrative and rewards device, and the fact that the same attention to detail has equally been put into this as all other aspects of the gameplay, I would say that Red Dead Redemption 2 may very well have the best secondary snorkeling mechanic in any game to date. And you can take that from a golf pro.
Thank you so much for watching this video. I really do hope you enjoyed it. Big shout out to my friend Louis, who helped me a lot with the camera work in this particular video. If you've been subscribed to me for a while, you know that I'm always trying to make each video better than the last in terms of production value, and he really helped me do that a lot this time around. If you like this video because of the substance within it, then maybe share it with a friend or someone you think might like it. It would actually really help me a lot in terms of creative motivation, and maybe also my sanity. But hey, if you also liked it just because of me, well, be sure to let me know down in the comments. What did you like about it? My editing? My jokes? My personality? What else do you like? Do you like my whole channel? Let me know down in the comments. Comment about anything. Leave me a compliment. Leave me a complaint. Leave me 5 of them. Just get back to me. Just leave comments down there. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I just hit 200 subscribers, which technically means I'm now a big fish here on YouTube. And it's time to do what every big fish does. And luckily, I'm well prepared. It is time to go fishing for compliments. Here we go.
Gonna build a castle. Gonna build it high. Gonna build it brick by brick and stone by stone till it reaches up to the sky. When the sun goes down and the wind gets cold, we'll be warm inside.